the very good story, The Lover by Maxim Gorky. It's in fact titled Her Lover, not The Lover, Her Lover. We'll be discussing the story. Initially, we look at the biographical details of Maxim Gorky because Maxim Gorky is one of the world famous writers of the world, and we know that Maxim Gorky has written a lot of beautiful stories, novels, plays, and autobiographies. Now, the very name Maxim Gorky has a lot of significance because Gorky, the very word, means bitter, painful, and from the very surname Gorky, in fact, we understand the volume of the magnitude of pain that the writer Maxim Gorky underwent in his life. So the real name of Maxim Gorky is Alexei Maxiovich Peshkov, and later he took the pseudonym Maxim Gorky, and you can understand that Maxim Gorky is a person who underwent maximum Gorky or pain. So it's in fact quite shocking that this great writer of Russia, the great writer of the world, underwent so much of great pain. Like he lived his life as an orphan when he was very young. So we know that he was born on the in a poor family, in a very poor family on the bank of river Volga, and his father died when he was just 4 years, and his mother remarried later, and he was looked after by his maternal grandparents, and his grandfather was very, very harsh and rude, and he was compelled to undertake a lot of work, and he worked as a as an assistant in the shoemaker's shop as a very young boy. At the age of 8 years, he had to work as an assistant in a shoemaker's shop. Then again, he worked as a servant boy for an icon painter, and he was also working as a dishwasher for some time in a steamer, that is, of course, a ship. And from all this, we understand that he underwent a lot of difficulty, a lot of misery. And of course, at the age of 9, he was orphaned at the age of 9. And of course, we can understand at the age of 9, this boy is very young and he doesn't have anybody to help him. And from the age of 9 onwards, he is working very hard, and he worked in a steamer, that's of course a ship, and the cook in that ship is just introducing Maxim Gorky to reading. And with the help of the cook in this ship, he began to read a lot, and he understood, or rather he enjoyed the greatness or the beauty, or rather the splendor in great literature. And thereafter, of course, he went on reading all the books he came across. He read a lot of great literature, and under the influence of the books he read, his imaginative powers and his literary talents just improved, and slowly he also began to write a lot. And we know that great writers of the world underwent a lot of tormenting, painful experiences, and it is the very hard realities of life. It is a very painful, miserable, traumatic experiences of the life that make them great writers. And Maxim Gorky also underwent a lot of pain, a lot of difficulty, and we understand that he was often beaten up by his employers, quite often beaten up by his employers, and he didn't have enough food he didn't have anyone to care for him, and of course he starved many a time. And all this experience, being beaten up, being orphaned, and starving, and of course just working from, of course, job to job, like working as a dishwasher, working as maybe an assistant to an icon painter, and a lot of difficult experiences. And he knew what the life of the poor people in Russia was. And in his stories, novels, and of course plays and poetry, he is depicting the pain of the poor people, the problems of the poor people. And of course we have great works like the lower depths. Some of the important works of Maxim Gorky are the lower depths, then the mother, then three of them, summer folk, children of the sun. These are all some of the great works of Maxim Gorky. And now we have to, of course, we have a lot of biographical details in our course book that is appreciating fiction. And I'm not just going to read out all that in the course book appreciating fiction. So we know that he was a great writer. He wrote a lot of short stories, novels, and all. A great prolific writer, writing one after the other. Now, with this short introduction on the biographical details of Maxim Gorky, we are just going to have a discussion of the story prescribed, that is Her Lover. Her Lover is one of the best short stories of Maxim Gorky, because it deals with some of the main problems, of some of the main themes of the 20th century, or the 19th century, or the 20th century world, especially people in Russia. Say, for example, this story is about human loneliness. Some of the themes in the short story Her Lover is one is human loneliness, and the other theme is lack of communication. Another theme is fragmented and lost identity in modern industrial society. So the fragmented and lost identity in modern industrial society, especially modern industrialized Russian society. And we know that the Her Lover is the title, and the titular heroine is the lady, the blonde lady who is named Teresa. Teresa is the very heroine of the story. The story is about the problems of Teresa. The story is about the loneliness of Teresa. So Maxim Gorky very effectively, very realistically represents the just delineates or copies the problems encountered by Teresa. Teresa is a poor lady, a very, very lonely character. She doesn't have any friends. She doesn't have anyone to interact with, and she longs for the company of someone. And we have the narrator and the two, Teresa and the narrator, stay in the same apartments. The rooms are nearby, and the very thirst for companionship, the longing for friendship, the desire to be loved, the desire to be heard of Teresa is very, very realistically just copied in this wonderful novel, short story, Her Lover. I'll be just reading the story right now, and after a reading of the story Her Lover of Maxim Gorky, we'll be just discussing the questions given at the end of the story in the course book prescribed for the BA English main students of fourth semester of the University of Calicut. And now let's begin the short story, Her Lover of Maxim Gorky. Her Lover, Maxim Gorky. An acquaintance of mine once told me the following story. When I was a student at Moscow, I happened to live alongside one of those ladies whose repute is questionable. She was a Paul, and they called her Teresa. She was a tallish, powerfully built brunette with black, bushy eyebrows and a large, coarse face as if carved out by a hatchet. The bestial gleam of her dark eyes, her thick bass voice, her cabman like gait, and her immense muscular vigor, worthy of a fishwife, inspired me with horror. I lived on the top of top flight, and her garret was opposite to mine. I never left my door open when I knew her to be at home. But this, after all, was a very rare occurrence. Sometimes I chanced to meet her on the staircase or in the yard, and she would smile upon me with a smile which seemed to me to be sly and cynical. Occasionally, I saw her drunk, with bleary eyes, tousled hair, and a particularly hideous grin. On such occasions, she would speak to me. So, this is the very, very beginning of the story, very captivating, interesting beginning, and the readers feel like knowing more about the lady Teresa. So, the narrator, just an acquaintance of mine, once told me the following story. So, Maxim Gorky tells us that one of his friends told him the story, and the it is, of course, when I was at Moscow, right? The narrator was at Moscow. I happened to live alongside one of those ladies whose repute is questionable. This is very important. Whose repute is questionable means, okay, people are doubtful about her reputation. She is not accepted by everybody. People are doubtful about what her profession is, what she does, and she could be doing something bad. That could be the reason why her repute is questionable. Okay, and she is. Now we have to discuss this passage because this passage helps us to understand more about the heroine, that is Teresa. She is a Pole, that means her nationality is Polish. She is from Poland, and everybody calls her Teresa. And her appearance, how does she look like? She is tallish, powerfully built brunette with dark hair, well built, tall, and black, bushy eyebrows. She has dark, bushy eyebrows, and her face is large and coarse, not very attractive, as if carved out by a hatchet, and her bestial gleam of her dark eyes, her thick bass voice, her cabman like gait, and her immense muscular vigor, worthy of a fishwife. A fishwife is, of course, a lady who behaves badly, inspired me with horror. So the narrator is rather afraid of, or rather, he has some horror of the lady. He is afraid of this lady. That is the thing. He doesn't like to see her. He doesn't like to interact with her. He thinks that she is a bad lady, a bad woman, and her appearance is not very attractive. That's about the heroine, the beginning. Now let us just continue. But although he is trying to just hide himself from Teresa, the Polish lady, at times when he comes out, he just goes down the stair, they meet each other and they just speak to each other. Now let's just look at the subsequent section of the story. How do you do, Mr. Student? And her stupid laugh would still further intensify my loathing of her. Sometimes on the way, she greets him and she asks, "How are you? How do you do?" And the narrator is rather afraid, and it is told that her greetings just intensify my horror. He is being horrified by the presence of the lady. I should have liked to have changed my quarters in order to have avoided such encounters and greetings. But my little chamber was a nice one, and there was such a wide view from the window, and it was always so quiet in the street below, so I endured. Okay, so the narrator doesn't like to stay there because of this lady. Now, but because of something else, that is because of the very location of the apartment, and because of the beautiful scene he has from the window of his room, he doesn't like to change the room. But sometimes he thought of changing the room, changing the apartment, because he doesn't like the presence of Teresa. He doesn't like to talk to her because she is of a questionable reputation. But now that the chamber was a nice one, the room of the narrator is a nice one, and he has, of course, a good view from the window, and it was quite rather tranquil and serene all around. He doesn't want to change the room. He endures, he suffers the presence of the questionable lady of questionable reputation, that is Teresa. So I endured. So question again, why does the narrator continue to stay in the same chamber? Okay, so that is because of the wonderful location, good view from the window. So too the lonely, tranquil, serene atmosphere of the room. And one morning, I was sprawling on my couch, trying to find some sort of excuse for not attending my class. Yeah, it was, of course, a working day for him. It was a day he had class in the college, but he didn't go to the college. He did not want to attend the class. Now he's in his room, just resting on his couch. When there was a knock on the door. When the door opened, and the bass voice of Teresa the loathsome resounded from my threshold. So he opens the door. At the door was, outside the door was Teresa the loathsome. Teresa, the woman of disputable, questionable reputation, the loathsome lady, the lady the narrator is afraid of. Good health to you, Mr. Student. What do you want? I said. I saw that her face was confused and supplicatory. It was a very unusual sort of face of her. So now, narrator opens the door. He looks at the face of Teresa, and it was confused. There was confusion on the face of Teresa. Teresa is rather upset and worried. She wants to. She wants some help, right? And there is, of course, some supplicatory. Her face was confused and supplicatory. Supplicatory, what does it mean? She is rather seeking some help, begging some help, asking for some help. Supplicatory. And now let's listen. Sir, I want to beg a favor of you. Will you grant it me? So Teresa asks the narrator, will you please do a help? Can you help me? I lay there silent and thought to myself, gracious, courage, my boy. So the narrator is afraid of the lady, and he speaks to himself, be bold, be strong, face her. Now the lady, I want to send a letter home. That's what it's, she said. Her voice was beseeching, soft, timid. Now Teresa asked the narrator, would you please write a letter for me? I want to send a letter home. That's why I'm here. And now she said, her voice was beseeching, soft and timid. She's just imploring him, please write a letter for me. Deus take you. He thought, right? The narrator thinks to himself, Deus take you. Deus take means get lost, may you be with the devil, damn, such kind of, it's in fact a curse. He curses because he doesn't like the presence of Teresa. Deus take you. I thought, may the devil take you, get lost. But up I jumped, sat down at my table, took a sheet of paper and said, come here, sit down, dictate. Although he doesn't like Teresa, the narrator asks her, okay, all right, please dictate. Tell me what I must write for you. I'm ready. She came, sat down very gingerly on a chair. Gingerly, cautiously. Teresa sits on the chair in the room of the narrator, gingerly, cautiously, carefully, and looked at me with a guilty look. She has guilt on her face. Why? Why is her face guilty? We'll find the answer later, because it's not because she has done anything and anything bad, or not because she is of course really guilty, because let us understand, maybe it is of course something about the letter he is going to write. So this is very important. She has a guilt look, and now we are just looking forward to the answer. Why does Teresa has a guilty look on her face? Well, to whom do you want to write this letter? To Bolslav Kashput at the town of Siena on Warsaw Road. So this is the identity and the details of the person to whom the narrator is writing a letter. That is, of course, he's writing this letter for Teresa. Teresa is writing this letter to Bolslav Kashput at the town of Siena on the Warsaw Road. Well, fire away, says the narrator. Okay, speak. Just tell me. Hurry up. What do you want me to write? My dear boss, my darling, my faithful lover, may the Mother of God protect thee, thou heart of God. Why hast thou not written for such a long time to thy sorrowing little dove, Teresa? So this is the beginning of the letter. The narrator is writing the letter that is dictated by Teresa, and Teresa is asking, the letter is to Teresa's lover, and Teresa is asking, my dear boss, my darling, my faithful lover, may Mother of God protect thee, thou heart of gold. Why hast thou not written for such a long time to thy sorrowing little dove, Teresa? I very nearly burst out laughing, and now the narrator is laughing. He is just full of laughter. He's laughing because a sorrowful little dove, more than 5 feet high. So the narrator is sure that she is not a little dove, more than 5 feet high, with fists as stone and more in weight, and black, and as black a face as if the little dove had lived all its life in a chimney and had never once washed itself. Restraining myself somehow, I asked, who is this ballast? Who is this ballast? That is Bolslav Kashput, right? And the lady says, balls, Mr. Student, she said, as if offended with me for blundering over the name. Is balls, my young man. Now the narrator asks, who is this young man? And she says, this is my lover. Why are you so surprised, sir? Cannot a girl, have a young man? So the lady is asking if she cannot have a young man. She, a girl. Well, oh, why not? I said, all things are possible. And has he been your young man long? So how long have you been in love? Asked the narrator to Teresa. And she says, 6 years. She says that they have been in love for last 6 years. Oh no. Oh, you were in love for 6 years? I thought. Well, let us write your letter. Now the narrator continues the letter. And I tell you plainly that I would willingly have changed places with this balls if his fair correspondent had been not Teresa, but something less than she. Okay, again, very funny remark of the narrator. Narrator says that I tell you plainly that I would willingly have changed places with these balls. I would have been balls. I myself would have been Teresa's lover if his fair correspondent Teresa Had not been Teresa, but something less than she. Okay, that is of course right. He says that he could have been her lover, of course, if she were maybe prettier. I thank you most heartily, sir, for your kind services, said Teresa to me with a courtesy. Perhaps I can show you some service. Now the letter has been written. Narrator wrote the letter, and Teresa says, I am so grateful to you. Thank you very much for writing this letter. Now, of course, can I do something for you? Can I help you? Now that you have written this letter for me, I'm ready to help you. Perhaps I can show you some service. May I do something for you? Can I help you? No, I almost humbly thank you all the same. And narrator says, no, no, thank you very much. You needn't do anything for me. Okay, thank you. Perhaps, sir, your shirts or your trousers may want a little mending. And Teresa is asking the narrator, okay, sir, maybe if you need, I can just do some, I can stitch your shirt. Maybe if you need me to stitch your shirt or your trousers, I can do that. I can help you. I felt that this mastodon in petticoats had made me grow quite red with shame, and I told her pretty sharply that I had no need whatever of her services. So I felt that this mastodon in petticoats. So this mastodon in petticoat means this lady who is huge like an elephant in dressed in petticoat. Okay, is making me all the more rather discomfortable. And I told her, the narrator tells her, no need of, I don't want any service from you. You better get lost. She departed. Now Teresa goes out of the room of the narrator. She departed. Now, sometime later, a week or two passed away. It was evening. I was sitting at my window whistling and thinking of some expedient for enabling me to get away from myself. I was bored. The weather was dirty. I didn't want to go out, and out of sheer ennui, I began a course of self analysis and reflection. This also was dull enough work, but I didn't care about doing anything else. Then the door opened. Heaven be praised, someone came in. Now, another incident after 2 weeks, the narrator is lonely, he suffers from ennui. Ennui, Ennui, ennui is soul killing boredom. Narrator suffers from some soul killing boredom, and he is just thinking of some expedient. Expedient is he thinks what he can do or what he would do because he is undergoing so much of boredom. He wants to do something. As he is sitting very bored and idle and rather just in some kind of soul killing boredom, suddenly somebody knocks on the door, and he opens the door. Oh, Mr. Student, you have no pressing business, I hope. Now, it was Teresa. So Teresa comes there. Teresa asks, oh, Mr. Student, are you free? Are you busy with something, or can I just talk to you? No. What is it? I'm not busy. What do you want me to do? I was going to ask you, sir, to write me another letter. Now, Teresa wants the narrator to write one more letter. Very well. To Balls, are you just going to write a second letter to Bolslow Kashput? Narrator is asking. No, this time it's not for him. It's not for him. It is from him. Now look at that. Teresa wants the narrator to write a letter as if it is a reply from her lover, Balls. It is first letter was a letter to Balls. Now the narrator has to write a letter as if it is a reply from Balls. No, this time it's not. It's from him. What? Narrator is shocked. What? Stupid that I am. It's not for me, Mr. Student. I beg your pardon. It is for a friend of mine. That is to say, not a friend but an acquaintance. So this letter is written from Bowles, and this letter, Bowles is not writing to me. Bowles is writing this letter to a friend of mine, a man acquaintance. He has a sweetheart just like me there. So Bowles is writing a letter to one of the friends of Teresa, and he has a sweetheart. So the yeah, Teresa's friend has a sweetheart, and that sweetheart is just like Teresa. He has a sweetheart just like me here, Teresa. That is how it is. Will you, sir, write a letter to this Teresa? That's it. So look at that. And from maybe by the end of the story, we understand more about the mental, psychological, emotional, social problems suffered by Teresa. Now, the narrator as well as the readers are unable to understand the riddle, the enigma, the mystery behind the character Teresa. Why she's asking the narrator to write a letter as if it is from Bowles, and it is not to this Teresa, it is to an acquaintance of Teresa who is in love with a lady like Teresa. That is the very situation of the background of writing the second letter. I looked at her. Her face was troubled. Her fingers were trembling. She's just quivering and trembling. I was a bit fogged at first, and then I guessed how it was. Look here, my lady, I said. There are no Bowleses or Theresas at all, and you have been telling me a pack of lies. You are a liar. The narrator calls Teresa a liar. Don't you come sneaking about me any longer. I have no wish whatever to cultivate your acquaintance. Do you understand? Narrator is very, very angry, and he asks her, don't come this way anymore. Don't come and pester me anymore. You are a liar. I don't like to have your companionship, your friendship anymore. You understand? Don't disturb me anymore. And suddenly she grew strangely terrified and distraught. She began to shift from foot to foot without moving from the place, and spluttered comically as if she wanted to say something and couldn't. I waited to see what would come of all this, and I saw and felt that apparently had made a great mistake in suspecting her of wishing to draw me from the path of righteousness. It was evidently something very different. Now the narrator is very, very angry, and he spoke in a rude way, and the lady is terrified and distraught, and she is so moved, and she just moves from foot to foot and spluttered comically. She is speaking, spluttered is just speaking in an angry way, and she just feels hurt by the words of the narrator, and she responds, Mr. Student, she began, and suddenly, waving her hand, she turned abruptly towards the door and went out. Now that the narrator scolded her, spoke in a rude way, she leaves the room of the narrator. She went out. I remained with a very unpleasant feeling in my mind. Now the narrator is sad because he spoke to her in a very rude way, and he has some feeling of unpleasantness. I remained with a very unpleasant feeling in my mind. I listened. Her door was flung violently to. Plainly, the poor wench was very angry. Now, the poor wench is a bad fallen woman, a prostitute, a whore. Now, this lady, she has been just treated in a very bad way. She was called a liar, and the narrator is very angry with her. She's just banging the door shut, and she plainly, okay, her door was flung violently too. Plainly, the poor wench was very angry. I thought it over and resolved to go to her and inviting her to come in here, write everything she wanted. Now, the narrator is suffering from some kind of guilt feeling, and he changes his mind. He thinks to go to her room and ask to tell her that he would be writing the second letter. I entered her apartment. I looked around. She was sitting at the table, leaning on her elbows with her head in her hands. We see Teresa, who is, of course, very, very upset and worried. I entered her apartment. I looked around. I looked round. She was sitting at the table, leaning on her elbows with her head in her hands. Listen to me, I said. Listen to me, I said. Now, whenever I come to this point in my story, I always feel horribly awkward and idiotic. Well, listen to me, I said. The narrator is asking Teresa to listen to him. She leaped from her seat, came towards me with flashing eyes, and laying her hands on my shoulders, began to whisper, or rather to hum in a peculiar bass voice. Now, Teresa is surprised by the visit of the narrator, and she speaks. Look, you now. It's like this. There is no balls at all. There is no Teresa either. But what's that to you? Is it a hard thing for you to draw your draw your pen over paper? Can't you just write something for me? Huh? Ah, and you too, still such a little fair-haired boy. Teresa is there is nobody at all. Neither Bowles nor Teresa, only me. There you have it, and much good may it do you. Okay, so Teresa is rather shocked and she's asking the narrator, okay, you're right. I was a liar. There is no Bowles. There is no Teresa. Okay, yeah, it is just me. But what is wrong in writing something for me? Why can't you write a letter for me? Please, why could? Pardon me, said I, altogether flabbergasted by such a reception. What is it all about? There is no balls, you see. Now the narrator can't understand anything. The narrator is asking, okay, what's it? You say there is no balls. You say there is no Teresa. And why should I write this letter? Why? The narrator is perplexed. Why? And no, so it is. No Teresa either. No Teresa. I am Teresa. I didn't understand it at all. The narrator doesn't understand anything. I fixed my eyes upon her and tried to make out which of us was taking leave of his or her senses. Very, very perplexed. The narrator is perplexed. And but she went again to the table, searched about for something, came back to me, and said in an offended tone, if it was so hard for you to write to Balls, look, there is your letter, take it. Others will write for me. And now Teresa takes the first letter narrator had written and she returns it to him and tells, okay, if you can't write letter for me, keep it with you. Maybe somebody else may write for me. I looked. In her hand was my letter to Balls. Narrator is shocked by the first letter. He knew that his letter has not been sent to anybody. Now he understood that this letter is something that is just written for Teresa with maybe some special purpose. Listen, Teresa, what is the meaning of all this? Why must you get others to write for you when I have already written it and you haven't sent it? The narrator is asking, okay, I have written this letter for you. And why should others write it to you? I have written it to you and I have written it for you and you haven't sent it to anybody. And now it is futile. This letter is useless. Now why should I write another letter? You are not going to send it to anybody. Then why? Send it where? Why? To these balls. Okay, You said you wanted me to write this letter to balls. You said you had a lover, and why didn't you send it to these balls? Why didn't you write this letter to just? Why didn't you send this letter to, of course, somebody? You could just send it. There is no such person. Okay, and now Teresa says, this is the reality. There isn't anyone there. My letter is not going to be received by anybody. I'm not going to send this letter to anyone. I absolutely did not understand it. There was nothing for me but to spit and go. Then she explained. Now the narrator feels so angry. He felt like spitting down there and leaving the room. And what is it? She said, still offended. Now Teresa is still angry and offended. She's asking, okay, yeah, there isn't anyone. I'm not going to send this letter to anyone. But you please understand, there is no such person, I tell you. And she extended her arms as if she herself did not understand why there should be no such person. But I wanted him to be. Am I then not a human creature like the rest of them? Yes, yes, I know, of course. Yet no harm was done to anyone by my writing to him that I can see. Okay? So she says, all right, there wasn't anyone like that. But am I then not a human creature like the rest of them? Okay? Am I not a human creature? Am I not a human being? I just want, of course, to write to somebody. I just want to get letter from somebody. Maybe in reality, I don't have anyone, but I am a human being. And as a human being, I wish to be loved. I wish to communicate with others. I do not want anymore to be lonely. Is there anything wrong if I wish to receive a letter from somebody? There isn't anyone to write to me. And if I am asking you to write a letter as if it is from maybe my lover who is not there, is there anything wrong? And can't you write such a letter? This is the pardon me to whom? To balls, of course. But he doesn't exist. Now, a narrator even now can't understand it. He cannot understand it even now. Alas, alas. But what if he doesn't? He doesn't exist, but he might. I write to him, and it looks as if he did exist. And Teresa, that's me. And he replies to me, and then I write to him again. And Teresa says, yeah, yeah, but if he doesn't exist. Okay, sure, he doesn't exist, but he might. Yeah, he doesn't exist, but can he exist? Can he exist in my imagination? Can he exist in my fantasy? Or can he exist in my fancy? Can't I just dream? Can't I just dream about having a lover like him? So, pardon me to whom? To balls, of course. But he doesn't exist. Alas, alas. But what if he doesn't? He doesn't exist, but he might. I write to him, and it looks as if he did exist. And Teresa, that's me, and he replies to me, and then I write to him. I understood at last. At last, the narrator understood why Teresa is just playing like this. Because she feels such lonely. She suffers from such kind of soul-killing boredom. She is not having anybody to communicate to. I understood at last. And I felt so sick, so miserable, so ashamed somehow. Okay, now the narrator understands the problems of Teresa and he feels sorry about her. He feels sorry about her. He is ashamed of her. Ashamed of himself. He is, of course, he feels that he is in a miserable condition. Rather, she is in a miserable condition. He failed to understand her. And I understood at last. I felt so sick, so miserable, so ashamed somehow, alongside of me, not 3 yards away. This is the reality. Alongside of me, not 3 yards away, lived a human creature who had nobody in the world to treat her kindly. Teresa is such a human being who hadn't anyone, who didn't have anyone. 3 yards away, there lived a human being who didn't have anybody to treat her kindly, affectionately, and this human being had invented a friend for herself. So, this is the reality. Teresa had invented a friend for herself. She had invented a friend for herself because she didn't have a friend in reality. Because she very much likes to have the companionship of somebody. She's just imagining that, visualizing that, dreaming that she has a friend. And this is because he failed to be a friend of her. Look now, you wrote me a letter to Bols, and I gave it to someone else to read it to me. And when they read it to me, I listened and fancied that Bowles was there. This is what Teresa did. This was what was happening. Look now, you wrote me a letter to Bowles, and I gave it to someone else to read it to me. And when they read it to me, I listened and fancied that Bowles was there. And I asked you to write me a letter from Bowles to Teresa, that is to me. When they write such a letter for me and read it to me, I feel quite sure that Bowles is there and life grows easier for me in consequence. Okay? So, this is why I asked you to write this letter. You will write a letter to me as if it is written by Bowles. I'll take this letter to my somebody else and they will read it to me. And when they read it to me, I think that there was such a person like Bowles. I think that I had a lover like Bowles. Although I know that there isn't anyone really. But that thought of having a lover is something that is soothing to me, something that is comfortable for me because I suffer from such kind of alienation. I suffer from such kind of loneliness. And this is the very message Maxim Gorky wants to pass to the readers. No one can live the life of a lonely person. No one is an island. Human beings, X or Y, wishes to have companionship, friendship, and let us understand this great reality. Let us be nice to others. Let us be friendly to others. Let's be kind to others. Let us smile at others. Let's talk to them. Those take you for a blockhead. May you go to hell, you stupid blockhead is stupid, you wood-headed, you fool. May you go to hell. Get lost, you fool, said I to myself when I heard this. So the narrator, he speaks to himself. Get lost. May you go to hell. Go to the devil. And from thenceforth, now the narrator is sorry for his mistake. He is so sad that he could not understand the feelings of Teresa. And from thenceforth, regularly, twice a week, I wrote letter to Balls and an answer from Balls to Teresa. Now, after that, having understood Teresa's longing for friendship, having understood Teresa's desire for companionship, he is writing her letters. I wrote letter to Balls and an answer from Balls to Teresa. I wrote those answers well. She, of course, listened to them and wept like anything, roared, I should say, with a bass voice. And in return for my thus moving her to tears by real letters from the imaginary balls, she began to mend the holes I had in my socks, shirts, and other articles of clothing. Subsequently, about 3 months after this history began, they put her in prison for something or other. No doubt by this time she is dead. Now, this is the story of Teresa. So thereafter, now narrator understood Theresa's longing for companionship. He goes to her, he writes letters for her, he gives her company. They just sit together, they talk, they make merry. And now, after some time, maybe after some 3 months, something happened to her. What happened to Teresa? They put her in prison. That is, Teresa is arrested by the police, and she is later reported to be dead. My acquaintance shook the ash from his cigarette, looked pensively up at the sky, and thus concluded. So the narrator was told the story by the friend, the acquaintance. Now he has completed the story of Teresa. Now he finished his cigarette. Now he shakes this cigarette, and he says that Teresa was later dead. Now, of course, there is more very interesting thing, that is, he comes forward with some realization. The acquaintance, well, the more a human creature has tasted of bitter things, the more it hungers after the sweet things of life. So this is the conclusion of the acquaintance of the narrator. My acquaintance shook the ash from his cigarette, looked pensively at the sky, looked contemplatively in a meditative way at the sky, and concluded. This is the conclusion of the friend of the narrator. And what does he say? Well, the more a human creature has tasted of bitter things, if somebody has tasted very painful experiences, the more it hungers after the sweet things of life. So that is true in the case of Teresa as well, because Teresa suffered a lot. Teresa had a lot of pain. Teresa was alienated, lonely, and she felt a lot of ennui or soul-killing boredom, and that is the pathetic condition. Because she suffered so much of bitter experiences, she longs for sweet things. So the more pain you suffer, the more you long to have joy. This is the message the acquaintance of the narrator gives. The more a human creature has tasted of bitter things, the more it hungers after the sweet things of life. And we, wrapped around in the rags of our virtues and regarding others through the mist of our self sufficiency and persuaded of our universal impeccability, do not understand things. This is very, very important. This is the message of the story. This is what Maxim Gorky wants to convey to the readers. We, wrapped round in the rags of our virtues, we are all virtuous, we are all privileged, we are rich, we have friendship, we have friends, we have a family, we have of course a lot of companions and friendship, we have a good social life, and regarding others through the mist of our self-sufficiency, we are self-sufficient, we have everything what we wish for, and persuaded of our universal impeccability, do not understand this. We think that we are excellent, and because we are self-sufficient, because we think that we are excellent, because we think that we are perfect, we are prejudiced about others. We think that others are maybe bad. Maybe a person like Teresa is, of course, a fallen woman. She is, of course, we think that some people, the narrator also thinks that she is a fallen woman, she is a whore, she is of a questionable reputation. And because we are prejudiced, why are we prejudiced about others? We are prejudiced about others because we are fortunate, we are privileged, we are lucky, we have everything, and out of our self-sufficiency, out of our fortune, out of our blessed condition, we are prejudiced about others. And because of our prejudice, we do not care for others. We are not sympathetic, empathetic, kind, and caring for people like Teresa. and we have to change our attitude. And the whole thing turns out pretty stupidly and very cruelly. The fallen classes, we say. We call these people, people like Teresa, fallen classes. And who are the fallen classes? I should like to know. They are, first of all, people with the same bonds, flesh and blood and nerves as ourselves. Okay? We call these people fallen classes. We call these people whores or prostitutes or strumpets or sinners or liars, but they are also people like us. They are also human being like us. They have the same flesh of ours. They have the same bonds of ours. They also wish to be loved. They also wish to be listened to. They also wish to have the companionship and friendship of others. So let us not just keep them away. We have been told this day after day for ages, and we actually listen, and the devil only knows how hideous the whole thing is. Or are we completely depraved by the loud sermonizing of humanism? In reality, we also are fallen folks. And Maxim Gorky tells that we are also fallen folks. We are also not better than or not better than people like Teresa. We are also like Teresa. Okay, we are also fallen because we don't understand the feelings of these people. Now that we fail to understand the feelings of our fellow beings, we are also fallen folks. Or are we completely depraved, corrupted by, or defiled by the loud sermonizing of humanism? We speak about being humane, we speak about being kind to fellow human beings, being nice to, being sympathetic, empathetic, kind, and all. But are we really? In reality, we are all we are also fallen folks, and so and so far as I can see, very deeply fallen into the abyss of self-sufficiency. All of us are fallen into the abyss of the deep gutters of deep ditches of deep pits of self-sufficiency. Now that we are self-sufficient, now that we are self-reliant, we don't understand others. Now that the narrator was self-sufficient, he failed to understand Teresa. In reality, we also are fallen folks, and so far as I can see, very deeply fallen into the abyss of self-sufficiency and the conviction of our own superiority. We think that we are superior human beings. We think that we are in a better position. We think that we are better than Teresa, and because we are self-sufficient, we are self-reliant, and because we are suffering from superiority feelings, we don't care for people like Teresa. But enough of this. This is enough. Let us change our attitude. Let us change our attitude. Enough of this. Let us not be rude and cruel to others. It is all as old as the hills. So old that it is a shame to speak of. Very old indeed. Yes, that's what it is. What does it mean? The ending, look at the ending of the story. But enough of this, it is all as old as the hills, so old that it is shame to speak of. The narrator feels ashamed of himself because this cruelty of modern man is as old as hills. We have been rather indifferent, unfriendly, unsympathetic to our fellow beings for many years. That is why it is said that it is all as old as the hills. Our prejudice, our hatred, our loathsome of people like Teresa has been as old as the hills. Okay, we are prejudiced, and because we are prejudiced, we are having a spiritual and moral decay. We have no values. And enough of this, it is all as old as the hills, so old that it is shame to speak of it. Very old indeed, yet that's what it is. Okay, and Maxim Gorky, the storyteller, the great novelist of Russia, the great novelist of the world, tells us that he feels so sad about the very, very prejudiced, biased attitude of people, maybe ourselves. He is blaming himself, he is blaming his fellow Russians as well. Okay, so this story is about the kind of spiritual and moral decay that has crept into the industrialized 20th century, or rather 19th century, or the modern world, the contemporary world. And with that, we come to the end of the story. Now we have to look at the questions and answers. I'll read and find I'll read and of course answer the questions. Right now, we have the first question: how does the narrator describe Teresa? So the narrator is describing Teresa in a very vivid way in the very opening of the story, very beginning. We have it. Okay, so she was a Pole. Teresa was a Pole, a Polish citizen, and her everybody called her Teresa. She was a tallish, powerfully built brunette with black, bushy eyebrows and a large, coarse face, as if carved out by a hatchet, an axe. The bestial gleam of her dark eyes, her thick bass voice, her cabman-like gait, and her immense muscular vigor, worthy of a fish wife, inspired me with horror. So this is the description of Teresa. Her appearance is so horrifying that the narrator is filled with loathsome or hatred. Now the next question: whose repute is questionable? Why? The repute of Teresa is questionable uh, because nobody knows what Teresa does, and often she is seen rather drunk, and she has bleary eyes and tousle hair, etc. Because of this reason, she is rather her reputation is rather questionable. And people say that she could be a prostitute, she could be doing something bad, she could be doing something morally ugly. Okay, and that is the reason why her reputation is rather questionable, the reputation of Teresa. Question number 3: why did the narrator loathe Teresa, and what intensified his loathing of her? The narrator is rather afraid of Teresa, or the narrator loathed Teresa because of her very mysterious and questionable background. And she doesn't look quite pretty, and she doesn't have any friendship, because she was tallish, powerfully built brunette with black bushy eyebrows, large coarse face, as if it is okay, and she doesn't look very very pretty, and she appears quite horrifying. And besides all this, her laughter has been described in this novel, and her laughter is a kind of stupid laughter, and this stupid laughter of Teresa is causing so much of fear or loathsome feeling in the narrator. Now, the answer we have, in fact, in the very beginning, that is page number 52 and 53, we have the answer. Now we come to the next question. Why didn't the narrator change his quarters, although he wanted to avoid meeting Teresa? Yes, we have in page number 53 of the course, on top we have the answer. Of course, he hated Teresa. He didn't want to live in right near the room of Teresa, but the room, his room was a nice room. The chamber was nice one, and there was such a wide view from the window, and it was of course a very tranquil and quiet place because of the good view from the window, and because of the tranquility and serenity of the very room of the narrator. He didn't want to change the room. Okay, now to change his quarters, right? Now the next question is the fifth question. What favor did Teresa seek from the narrator? Teresa seeks the favor of writing a letter from the narrator. Teresa wanted the narrator to write a letter for Teresa. That is it. I very nearly burst out laughing. Explain. So the narrator tells that he almost burst out into laughter because she is dictating the letter, and as she is dictating the letter, she describes herself as a a sorrowing little dove. This is it. And all these adjectives or all these modification, right, descriptions, Teresa's descriptions of herself to her lover Bowles is just making the narrator burst into laughter. Like she says that, my dear Bowles, my darling, my faithful lover, why don't you just write to me? I'm very near, I very nearly burst out laughing. A sorrowful little dove. Teresa just describes herself as a sorrowful little dove. Okay, then again, right, she also says that she is very, very beautiful and all. So, because of that reason, the narrator is just bursting out into laughter. Now, the next question. Perhaps I can show you some service. What service did Teresa offer, and how did the narrator respond to the offer? Okay, Teresa offers the narrator that she can do some mending work, like stitching or rather mending his shirts and trousers. And the narrator said that he doesn't want Teresa to do anything for him. Now, the next question, eighth question. Why did Teresa want the narrator to write the second letter? Why did Teresa want the narrator to write the second letter? Okay, Teresa wanted the narrator to write the second letter as if this letter is written for an acquaintance of Teresa's. This narrator has to write a letter for an acquaintance of Teresa, and that acquaintance of Teresa is having a lover like Teresa. That is it. And we understand that Teresa is going to take this letter to some others, and some others will be reading this letter to Teresa. And when somebody else is reading this letter to Teresa, Teresa has some happiness because she wants to be just loved by someone. She doesn't have anyone. She suffers from alienation and loneliness. Now, the next question: why was the narrator surprised when Teresa asked him to write the second letter? The narrator is surprised when Teresa is asking him to write this letter, because the second letter is going to be written to, of course, the letter is written as if it is for a friend of mine, that is to say, not a friend but an acquaintance, a man acquaintance. He has a sweetheart just like me, Teresa. That is how it is. Will you, sir, write a letter to this Teresa? So this letter is written by an acquaintance of Teresa, and that acquaintance is writing a letter to the friend who is just like Teresa. And because of this kind of confusion, the narrator is, of course, very, very surprised. Narrator is very, very surprised, right? So why was the narrator surprised when Teresa asked him to write the second letter? Okay, so this letter is going to be written to Teresa, somebody like Teresa. So the narrator is surprised. Comment on the narrator's immediate response when Teresa asked him to write the second letter. Okay, so it is rather unbelievable. The narrator is shocked and he's responding like, what? So the narrator is shocked, and it is unbelievable for him to understand the fact that he has to write a letter as if it is written by an acquaintance of Teresa's, and this acquaintance of Teresa is writing letter to somebody like Teresa, and he is rather shocked by that. Now, 11th question: how did Teresa behave when the narrator expressed his annoyance? So, when the narrator expressed his annoyance or his anger and pain and shock about all this foolishness, Teresa felt very, very angry, and she felt very, very terrified. She grew terrified. That's what we read in page number 44, 54, 54 bottom. We have the response of Teresa. She suddenly she grew strangely terrified and distraught. Okay, so she grew terrified and angry and upset. And now the next question, 12th question: what did Teresa do when the narrator entered her apartment offering to help her? So that answer we have in page number 55. I entered her apartment. I looked around. She was sitting at the table, leaning on her elbows with her head in her hands. She leaped from her seat, came towards me with flashing eyes, and laying her hands on my shoulders, began to whisper. So now Teresa is very happy when narrator goes to Teresa's apartment. Okay, so what did Teresa do when the narrator entered her apartment offering to help her? And Teresa tells everything. She admits that it was just a lie. She admits that she is a human being. She says that she wanted to be loved. She wanted to, of course, get a letter. She wanted to, of course, imagine that she has friends, right? Now, the next question: why was the narrator flabbergasted? That is, why was the narrator shocked? The narrator was flabbergasted or shocked when he understood the fact that there wasn't any balls, there wasn't any friend. All this was just something, all this was just a story, all this was just a dream, all this was just a reverie of Teresa, and he is shocked. 14th question: why did the narrator feel ashamed? Narrator felt ashamed for not understanding Teresa. Okay, he should have understood her feelings. She was always lonely. She was always alienated. She was cut off from the society. She didn't have anyone to lean on. She didn't have any companion or friend or anything. And he felt ashamed of himself for not understanding Teresa, a human being, for being rude to her. He again felt ashamed for being rude to her. Next question: how did Teresa and the narrator help each other? Thereafter, narrator writes letter to her. Now and then he listens to her, and they sit together, they talk to each other, they burst into laughter, they help each other. And of course, he found some meaning in his life when he was making friendship with her, and she also felt very happy about that. Both of them just made friendship. They spoke to each other, communicated with each other, and yeah, continued helping each other. Next question: what happened to Teresa at the end? At the end of the story, we understand that she was arrested, and she was, of course, she was in prison for some time. Maybe she was arrested of something that is immoral, and she dies in the prison. And it was reported that she died. Next question, 17th question: it is all as old as the hills. Very important question. It is all as old as the hills, so old that it is a shame to speak of it. Explain. So narrator concludes the story. Maxim Gorky concludes the story with this quotation: it's all as old as the hills, so old that it's a shame to speak of. Yeah, this is about the spiritual and moral decay of humanity. The spiritual and moral decay of humanity is as old as the hills. Human beings have been so prejudiced against one another. We have been so self-sufficient. We have been so much suffering from. We have been suffering from superiority feeling, that we fail to understand the feelings of the others. And because we were suffering from so much of self-sufficiency, self-reliance, and prejudice, we had a spiritual and moral decay, that we fail to understand our fellow human beings. And narrator says that our failure, or our failure to understand the fellow being, our failure to be sympathetic and empathetic and kind and friendly to the other, okay, is about the spiritual and moral decay. And our spiritual decay, our moral decay is so old as the hills. Okay, so now let us change ourselves. This is the message of the story. Now we come to the next question. Comment on the narrator's attitude to Teresa. The narrator has two attitudes in the beginning. This is, of course, a paragraph question. I'm not just going to give you all the details. I'm just giving you some points. The narrator was rather afraid of Teresa in the beginning. And the narrator tells that she had a questionable reputation. A questionable reputation. Like everybody thought that she's a whore or a prostitute, that she's a person of some mysterious background. She has no, she's not having a very good moral background. She does something very bad. She's a fallen woman, and it's not good that the narrator is making friendship with her. He was rather afraid of her. He just wanted, no, he didn't want to have companionship with her. He didn't want to talk to her. This is that is his attitude in the beginning. But later, when he understood that she wanted to have the companionship of somebody, when she wanted the friendship of somebody, when he understood her problem, he felt sorry for her, and he felt ashamed of himself for being very, very rude to her, and he changes his attitude. And by the end of the story, he has very good feelings for her. He has friendship with her. He goes to her, helps her, talks to her, keeps her company, and his attitude changes. So in the beginning, very hostile and inimical attitude. In the by the end, friendly, sympathetic, empathetic attitude, and that is the attitude Maxim Gorky wants everybody to have for fellow beings, no matter what the background of the people are, however poor or fallen they are. We have to give them help and companionship. Next question, paragraph question number 2. Yet no harm was done to anyone by my writing to him that I can see. Explain. So this is from the response of Teresa to narrator, that she asked him to write a letter to a person who was not there. So narrator was writing a letter to a person who was not there in reality. Teresa didn't have a lover as such, but he was asked to write, and Teresa is asking, okay, how does it affect you? Do you have to lose anything? Okay, what is wrong in me just imagining somebody like a lover? So why can't you just write a letter for maybe an imagined lover of me? I don't have anyone like that. So maybe when you write a letter for maybe an imagined friend of me, and when I read that letter, or when somebody reads that letter to me, I have some kind of comfort, or I have some kind of happiness and joy. And what's wrong in that? Why can't you write a letter maybe for somebody who is not there? Can't you just help me? Comment on the ending of the story. The ending of the story, her lover, is so moving and so touching that we, the readers, understand that this story has so much of significance, not during the time of Maxim Gorky alone. Even today, it has a lot of significance, because this is about people who are lonely. This story is about people who are not having any lovers, people who are not having any friends, people who are alienated, people who are lonely, people who are cut off from the society, people who are cut off from the family, people who are orphaned. And it's about human loneliness. It's about lack of communication. And We as human beings have to be considerate for others. We should give companionship to others. We should love others. We should listen to others. We should just care for others, help others. That is the very idea. And Maxim Gorky is criticizing the world for being so rude and just for being very selfish, right? We have been, mankind has been very selfish. Okay, and the decay of the value of the decay of the moral and the very spiritual value of human beings have been so huge, like a mountain, that Maxim Gorky is just very powerfully, blisteringly attacking the very indifferent attitude of modern man, and it has to change. He says that. Now, that is the ending of the story, and every reader feels some kind of guilt in the mind, that we were so rude and we don't have that value. Okay, now we now come to the next one, the character of Teresa. Okay, Teresa's character is moving, such a touching character. Teresa is, of course, a lonely, depraved, poor, miserable human being. And Maxim Gorky quite often writes about the poorest of the poor, the lonely of the lonely, the social outcasts. And yeah, this story is about Teresa, who is a social outcast. Teresa is a poor lady who is not having a friend. So this Teresa is a character who is, of course, lonely, cut off, alienated, and she has no identity. She is fragmented. She is, of course, like any human being who is fragmented and lonely in the modern industrialized Russia or the world. There are hundreds of people like Teresa who are cut off from the society, who are cut off from the family, who are cut off from, of course, the very fellow beings who feel lonely. Okay, and Teresa is such a character. But Teresa is also a human being, and every human being wants to be loved. Every human being wants to be, of course, cared for, wants to have a companion, wants to have a lover, wants to have a husband, wants to have a brother, sister. Okay, so Teresa is such a character who is, of course, and she is compelled to do maybe something that is rather immoral. She is compelled to. So Maxim Gorky is supporting such people who are compelled to be, maybe, of course, a prostitute, maybe, of course, a somebody who is an outcast, somebody who is doing maybe a very ugly, so-called inverted comma ugly job or menial job. Okay, there are people like that, and Maxim Gorky, just like Mahatma Gandhi, declares the fact that every labor is noble, every job is, of course, noble. All right, that is the very, and we feel sorry for a character like Teresa, and there are, even in 21st century, we have a lot of people like Teresa. Now, the essay question. Comment on the statement, the more the human creatures has tasted of bitter things, the more it hungers after the sweet things of life. It's a special reference to her lover. Her lover, the story of Maxim Gorky is about Teresa, a character who didn't have a lover at all. Teresa suffered a lot. She was marginalized, alienated, and lonely. She never had a companion. She underwent a lot of misery. She suffered a lot of pain, and the more we suffer, the more is our longing for joy. So the more Teresa was alienated, the more Teresa was just cut off from society, the more lonely Teresa was, the more she wishes to have the company of somebody. And it is very true in the case of very Maxim Gorky, the writer. Maxim Gorky had to undergo a lot of pain. he lost his father at the age of 4. He had to work from the age of 8. He was orphaned at the age of 9. And like Teresa, Maxim Gorky also did lead a very, very tragic life. And like Teresa, he also longed for love, fame, wealth, pleasure, joy, comfort, and all. So, whoever, the more painful experiences we have, the more joyful experience we wish to have. Okay, so that is it. And with, of course, textual references, we can write this essay question. Next essay question, the second essay question: how does her lover depict the spiritual and moral decay in social life and relationship? Yeah, this story, Her Lover of Maxim Gorky, is about the spiritual and moral decay in our society. Okay, the narrator, a representative of contemporary man, a representative of the industrialized Russia, the modern world, failed to understand Teresa. So the story is about human loneliness, the loneliness of Teresa. It's again about lack of communication. The narrator failed to communicate with Teresa. Similarly, every human beings fail to communicate with the fellow beings. So it is about loneliness. It's about lack of communication. Maybe it can happen within a family. There is no communication even within a family. So it's about loneliness. It's about lack of communication. It's again about fragmented and lost identity of modern industrialized world and Russian society. Okay, so and again remember, it is about the spiritual and moral decay. We have no spiritual value, we have no moral value, and because of that reason we fail to understand others. We think that I have a house, I have my family, I have my wife, I have my son, my daughter, I have my neighbors, I have my friends, and I don't care for such people, the poor people. I don't care such people, the prostitutes. I don't care for such people. Okay, so we hate certain people, but we have to understand the fact that they are also human beings. And if we fail to understand the very human quality or the human rights of such people, okay, it's our mistake, and we don't have any spiritual or moral value. Because of the decay of our spiritual value or moral value, that we fail to be kind to others, we fail to communicate with others, we fail to of course to be considerate to others, sympathetic and empathetic to others. We fail to forget and forgive others sometimes. Okay, so with that you can just answer this question. Now we come to the next, the third essay question. In Her Lover, Maxim Gorky portrays human loneliness, lack of communication, and fragmented and lost identity in modern industrialized Russian society. Discuss. So very textual question. We understand that the story is about the loneliness of Teresa. It's about the lack of communication that is that Teresa suffers from, that is shown to Teresa, and it is again about the fragmented, lonely, isolated life of people like Teresa. Okay, so textual, with textual additions and references, this essay can be written. And with this, we come to the end of the discussion of the beautiful story of Maxim Gorky, the lover. I wish you all the best. Thanks a lot for listening. May God bless you. Bye bye.